Everyone, welcome back to another video. I wanted to give a bit more time just to allow some results to come in because obviously Pennsylvania, a lot of these Rust Belt states were very close, but the results have come in and Joe Biden has been elected president. We probably won't see results from Arizona and Georgia for a long time. North Carolina might be projected within the next few days for Donald Trump. However, I thought this was a good time just to go over some of the results. And first of all, I'd just like to preface this by saying, for any of you that do support Donald Trump, again, that's absolutely your choice to support him, and that's absolutely fine if you believe in what he says, and what he believes in. But I just wanted to preface by saying that there is no instances of voter fraud. There is no instances of issues with mail-in voting. It is just dependent on the state's approach to actually counting mail-in votes, right? For example, early in the night, we saw Ohio go blue, and it looked like Joe Biden actually might have a shot at winning Ohio. And then as the results started coming in, as it went up to around 60 to 70% reporting, the election day turnout for Trump was overwhelming in the rural counties, and it was enough for him to obviously win the state by around 8 points, solidifying itself really as a conservative state. And other states, such as Pennsylvania, for example, started with the election day vote first and then went into the mail-in voting, which is why Trump had a massive lead, and then Biden eventually cut into it and overtook him in the state of Pennsylvania. So it's really about the state's policies towards actually counting mail-in votes. It's not that there's election fraud, that in Philadelphia there is widespread voter fraud. And I'd just like to say that Joe Biden actually underperformed Hillary Clinton in the state of Philadelphia in terms of his percentage. He's at 81. Hillary Clinton was at about 85. So if they're trying to rig the election in the city of Philadelphia, they're really doing a bad job, considering the fact that Joe Biden is doing worse in the city of Philadelphia. It's just that Donald Trump is doing worse in a lot of these rural counties than he did in 2016. So again, I just want to preface by saying that there really is no instances of voter fraud in any states in the Rust Belt. Again, Donald Trump had very slim victories here, and it would make sense for Joe Biden to as well have slim victories. He's going to win Wisconsin by around 20,000, which is what Donald Trump won by. So for Donald Trump to claim massive voter fraud and that those 20,000 votes should be, removed from the pile essentially for Joe Biden is just simply not true. And until there's evidence presented, of course, if there is realistic evidence, that should be presented into a court of law, and that's absolutely fine. The problem is there isn't any at this point. Sharpie Gate, a lot of these other conspiracies about, Trump supporters not being allowed into the polling sites in Philadelphia and other cities. It's not true that happened. They had to keep them out for a short period of time because of security issues. Obviously, if you're allowed to carry a rifle outside of a polling station, that is a security threat when you're counting votes. So again, no real instances of voter fraud. I just want to preface it with that. And Joe Biden did win this election, and I would say the same thing if Donald Trump was on top. And for Donald Trump to claim during the election that he wants the vote count to continue in Arizona because he's behind, but stop counting all the votes in Pennsylvania because he's ahead, it's just simply due to the fact that he wants to win these states. And the belief in democracy would show that we need to make sure to count all the votes, and that is the most fair and most democratic thing to do. And the votes are in, and Joe Biden was elected president. He's likely to expand on his popular vote margin because of California, New York, a lot of these big liberal states, not yet 100% reported. So I would see that this number will probably go up to 76 to 77 million by the end of the count. Now that we got that out of the way, I'd just like to say that Donald Trump did very, very well, all things considered. This map is actually shaping up very similar to how I projected it. I projected actually Joe Biden would be at 290. It's looking like he'll probably get to 306 because of Georgia. Joe Biden's been expanding. Once he overtook Donald Trump, he's up to about a 10,000 vote lead. Donald Trump is not very likely to be able to make up a 10,000 vote margin in a recount, right? It's going to a recount. Absolutely. They need to make sure everything's right. But again, Donald Trump doesn't necessarily benefit too much from a recount. He might pick up a couple hundred votes, but Joe Biden might also pick up a couple hundred votes if the votes were tallied incorrectly. So, again, not much to talk about here because I think that Joe Biden will end up carrying the state in a few weeks when the recount is done. They will project Joe Biden as the winner in the state of Georgia, which is really a stunning flip. And if you're talking about a referendum on the president, yes, a Rust Belt blue wall win and Donald Trump holding on to everything else. That's not a referendum on Trump. But the state of Georgia, just known for being one of the most conservative states, has gotten very competitive, and Stacey Abrams really making the difference for Joe Biden in the state of Georgia. She really carried him over the finish line, and his turnout was stunning in Atlanta, in a lot of these cities, Savannah, and Columbus. Really, it's stunning to see the amount of African American support. And yes, Joe Biden had massive support in the Democratic primaries with African Americans. It was South Carolina that really propelled him to victory within the Democratic primaries. But really looking at Atlanta, he did so much better than Hillary Clinton in this state. Hillary Clinton lost for around 5 to 6 points. Joe Biden looks as if he is going to win this state quite narrowly, probably around 0.2%. That's still a win regardless. And personally, flipping the state of Georgia would be a referendum on President Trump, in my opinion. So again, Atlanta, a lot of these cities around Georgia, Joe Biden did incredibly well. He's getting 83% in DeKalb County. Virtually everywhere you look, Donald Trump's doing worse in the rural counties, and Joe Biden is absolutely doing fantastic in the cities and the suburbs. The ex suburbs around the cities gets a bit more conservative as you go out to Henry County, a lot of Gwinnett County, a lot of these conservative counties. Again, used to be Republican strongholds, have turned into Democratic strongholds, which is why Joe Biden was able to flip the state. At this point, hasn't been called, but Joe Biden is very likely to hold on to his lead here. It went up from around 1,000 votes to 4,000 votes when Joe Biden took the lead. And then the military vote came in, interestingly enough. And I was thinking Donald Trump might be able to narrow his lead slightly because, again, the military is seen as more of a conservative constituency. But based on what's happening, we could see that Joe Biden actually won a large share of the overseas ballots, those who are voting in our armed services, as well as those who are voting in nations overseas, who are diplomats or ambassadors or things like that. So again, that just shows you that Donald Trump's support, at least with the military, had eroded. Again, that could be the fact that I'm not trying to be partisan in my analysis, just saying that it could be because of his comments about potentially John McCain, as well as his comments about calling people in our armed services losers and suckers. Again, this could all factor into the math here. And in a state that's so close, military ballots do count. Mostly they do not count in an election, but it is very close. And it is clear that the military vote did make a difference in this state for Joe Biden, and he is very likely to win. I just want to take time to talk about Georgia just because of how stunning of a development. Again, I was going to give it as a tilt to Donald Trump. I didn't think he could lose this state. I didn't think that Joe Biden would have such a massive victory in Clayton County and a lot of these huge Democratic areas. Big African American turnout, even better than Barack Obama did. He couldn't carry the state in 2008 or 2012, and he was an African American president. So it just shows you that at least the suburbs and the African American community, as well as the military community, has somewhat revolted against President Trump. Moving into the rest of the map, I guess I just like to start by saying that, again, all of the states that Hillary Clinton won, Joe Biden has won, and we just actually got new results from Nevada. Again, it was called a couple hours after Pennsylvania was called for Joe Biden. But again, he's expanding in Las Vegas. He's likely to win by a bigger margin here. It's around 2.2 points. It's only gone up. I expect him to probably get to around 3 to 4 points in the state of Nevada. As well as in the Rust Belt, right? We see the Rust Belt blue now. It was red for Donald Trump. It has flipped narrowly to Joe Biden. Again, his biggest margin of victory in the state of Michigan, which is what I was expecting. And I think he will expand here. And the reason why Donald Trump didn't do as well in this state is, again, a lot of these suburbs, or at least these rural areas that he did very well. He's getting the turnout he needs, but he's not getting the margins he needs, because Joe Biden is starting to run more competitive in a lot of these rural counties. We see a bit more blue on the map than we did when Hillary Clinton ran in the state, and we see more votes for Joe Biden in Detroit, right? He's greater than 98% in now. But that was really what put him over the top, is getting massive African American turnout here. It's a Democratic stronghold, and Michigan has gone back to blue. It's by a smaller margin than I expected, around 2.6 points at this point. Still a victory, but smaller than I would have expected, which just shows you how well Donald Trump did, all things considered, essentially being broke in terms of his campaign. He didn't have a lot of money, but he's able to get turnout. Pennsylvania as well was called yesterday. That's what put Joe Biden over the top. Really a fascinating state. Again, I kind of talked about it a bit when I was prefacing about mail-in voting and election day voting. But again, Donald Trump did extremely well in this state. He did extremely well as a Republican. He got extremely close. It was just overwhelming turnout in the suburbs, in the Philly suburbs, as well as around Philadelphia. Again, even though Joe Biden underperformed the Hillary Clinton's percentage, the turnout, at least for Democrats, was way up, right? So Donald Trump's getting more votes here than he did in 2016, but Joe Biden's getting a lot more votes as well, even though the percentage might be closer. So that's really what made a difference. And again, Donald Trump won the state by around 44,000 votes. The Biden campaign thinks that when all things are counted, they will win Pennsylvania by around 100,000 votes, which would stretch it over, I think, a point and a half, I'm fairly sure, would be 100,000 votes. And this is interesting. I was watching this yesterday because, again, it was always within 0.5%. And in states like Pennsylvania and Georgia's definitely going to a recount. But Pennsylvania, the law is within 0.5%. There's a recount. Right now, it's 0.61%. So it has stretched outside the margin of error, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, which means that the Trump campaign could not legally request a recount because, again, if it's outside of half a point in such a huge state, they likely didn't make enough mistakes for the person in second to be able to overcome the person in first. And there's still a small amount of votes left in Philadelphia and some of the suburbs, and Allegheny County still has 3% left to report. So Joe Biden likely to expand his margin. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1 point by today in the state of Pennsylvania. And there's a few pivot counties as well that John King was talking about for a long time, which is Erie County and Northampton County. Donald Trump won these narrowly. They have flipped back to Joe Biden, which was part of his math in such a close state. Flipping back two close counties, especially one with a major city, is going to make a difference. And it clearly did here. And he's winning narrowly in Erie County. But again, on election night, we saw Donald Trump absolutely sweeping the state of Pennsylvania. Erie County was, 10 to 15 points red. It has turned blue because of that mail-in vote. Joe Biden encouraged his supporters to be more safe on Election Day, vote early and vote by mail, while Donald Trump encouraged his supporters to vote in person. So this is not even a partisan effort here to try and say something. All I'm saying is that Donald Trump encouraged his supporters to vote in person. He had massive rallies with tens of thousands of people, and one can question the whether or not that was a good idea, especially in a national pandemic. That may have played into why he's lost in some of these states because of how he's handled that COVID pandemic. But again, really in this state, Joe Biden did very well. Donald Trump also did very well. It just simply wasn't enough. The math wasn't there for Trump to overcome the suburbs, which frankly is where he's toxic. And that's where that's where Joe Biden really improved. One problem, at least, for the Biden campaign that I see right now is Latinos. And in a state like Florida, I really did not see Donald Trump winning by, right now around 3.4 points. 3.4 points in a state that Donald Trump won by around 1.2 points. So even though he's losing this election, he expanded his margin by a lot in the state of Florida. And the reason for that, and I think a lot of people on election night also realized it, was in Miami-Dade. Biden did horribly in Miami-Dade County, and that's just the truth. Whether it could be Donald Trump's message in terms of Latinos and trying to get that Cuban vote as well, which is tend to be a more conservative constituency than Latinos, but they didn't come out for Joe Biden like they did for Hillary Clinton. He got that African American turnout that made a difference, but in a state that's much more Latino oriented, he didn't get the turnout. Donald Trump massively improved in Miami-Dade County. If you see Joe Biden winning by 7.6 points, that's really not a good margin in the state of Miami, in Miami-Dade County. Hillary Clinton carried this by nearly 25 points. So that was what made a difference. If Joe Biden was actually able to get that Latino turnout, we would have seen Florida much more competitive. Donald Trump still probably would have won. But again, even though Joe Biden was losing the state by a lot, Pinellas County, which did go very narrowly by around the same margin to Donald Trump, flipped to Joe Biden. And that's really the story of this election. This is, a little more exurban outside of Tampa, stretches more out into the rural counties or rural areas outside of the city. So again, this is really the story of the election because Joe Biden was able to win over just enough support to get over the line. Again, Donald Trump did extremely well in the state of Florida, much better than I expected. I did give him a tilt in the state of Florida, Donald Trump, on election day. However, I did not expect him to win by a comfortable lean margin. And Texas, the same story as well. We see Corpus Christi, usually a Democratic stronghold, flipped to Donald Trump because of how well he did with Latinos. And we saw as well some House districts that are usually Democratic strongholds almost flipped to the Republicans in southern Texas because of how well Donald Trump did with Latinos. Again, he lost a considerable amount of support with his white base. He couldn't get them out as much, and Joe Biden was able to turn out Democrats in numbers that Hillary Clinton simply couldn't. So again, much closer in the state of Texas. If Joe Biden was able to be much more competitive and win over those Latino voters the same way that Hillary Clinton did, we likely could have seen Texas much closer, probably within a lean margin. This is a likely margin. However, again, Donald Trump did much better with certain constituency groups, but he did not do enough to withstand a Democratic turnout. So at this point, there's not much left to talk about here. We have Arizona as well. This is getting very, very close. I do expect Joe Biden to win the state of Arizona. I think while we were actually speaking, Maricopa County came in as well, 98% reporting. So again, Donald Trump has been eating away at Biden's lead, but it hasn't been enough. It hasn't been the percentage that he needed to flip the state in the same way that he couldn't get that turnout in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. It simply was not enough. So Arizona at this point looking to be a blue state. Donald Trump's comments on John McCain, I believe, made the difference here, right? The way he talked about John McCain for years and years and years, even regardless of my political beliefs, Republicans were disgusted with the comments that Donald Trump made about a war hero. And regardless of one's political beliefs, no one can even comprehend the sacrifice that someone like John McCain made for this country. And for Joe, and he was such a huge figure in the state of Arizona. And again, the endorsement of Cindy McCain, the endorsement of Jeff Flake, a lot of prominent Republicans in this state, is going to likely put Joe Biden over the line here. Again, this is really the ghost of John McCain coming back to bite Donald Trump. And I think that's really, if not for his comments, I think he probably would have had enough. Maricopa County extremely close, but Joe Biden does have the edge. And if that county is still blue when all the votes are in, which it likely will, there's 98% in, then he will win the state of Arizona. So again, right now, what I'm predicting is Joe Biden in a few weeks when everything's recounted. I'm not sure about Arizona law in terms of what qualifies a recount. It seems like it would be within recount territory right now. However, I predict Joe Biden will be at 306 to Donald Trump's 232, which, again, really a stunning shift, right? Because Donald Trump won 306 electoral votes. So we would see a complete reversal for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Again, that red mirage on election night didn't mean too much because, again, in a way, a lot of Republicans, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, were using the legislature to essentially try and delegitimize Joe Biden. My apologies, I can't speak this morning. It's been a late night. I haven't gotten much sleep. But again, they've been trying to delegitimize Joe Biden's win because, again, it was the Republican legislature that decided that the mail-in voting could not be counted until after Election Day. If the Democrats and Philadelphia and a lot of these suburbs started counting the votes much earlier, Donald Trump likely would not have had the lead that he did have, and people would be much more confident in the democratic process. And I do believe that that would be the Republicans trying to essentially cast doubt on the results of Pennsylvania. Again, seeing Donald Trump up by 550,000 votes, you think he wouldn't be able to overcome that type of margin with 20% left. But again, all the vote that was left was hugely Democratic, and that flipped the state. So again, there's some questions as to what this electorate is and how the Democrats need to start reaching out to Latino voters, and also a question of how the Republicans need to start getting back some of those women who did vote for Donald Trump, who have now flipped heavily for Joe Biden in a lot of these key swing states that really put him over the line. Again, looking at the electoral votes, this is kind of an interesting map. Instead of representation by landmass, it's representation by electoral votes. So again, Joe Biden is over the top, 279, likely to get to 306 electoral votes. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know it's a long video. It was just, this election is critical. And Joe Biden's victory here, very critical, especially in Nebraska's 2nd district. I talked about this. Joe Biden winning pretty comfortably. I thought he would get a lean in this district. It has gone likely for Joe Biden. So again, the suburbs, really the story of this election, and Joe Biden was able to win the suburbs much better, and at this point, that would be the story of this election. Joe Biden will be inaugurated on January the 20th as the 46th president. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one. Make sure to subscribe.